Went to the hospital that night. I got assessed, got treatment. My teeth had been knocked into the roof of my mouth, so I had to have all them reset, black eyes, quite bad bruising on the neck. And it was a nurse that had said to me, "Should you know, this doesn't have to be your life." And I looked at her, I said, "I don't know what you mean." She said, this doesn't have to be your life, you know. There are other options, there are other opportunities. You've got to come together as a partnership, and this is what I teach, which is a little bit unethical, should we say, but you've almost got to treat it like a business, right? You've both got to put in, and you've both got to know what your roles are. Because if you don't know what your roles are, where are we, what are we doing, right?
Men are made to feel like a pig, air quote, because they have sexual or physical needs.
Yep.
Then a lot of the men will go, tell you what then, I'll just go look elsewhere.
Yes.
Then the man's a bastard because of that reason, right?
If it's toxic, it's consuming you and you are putting out that energy. Now, I believe energy attracts. If you're toxic, you're going to attract toxic. And it doesn't mean that you're a narcissist. It means you're someone that's broken.
Rebecca, what do you do and why do you do it?
I am a psychotherapist and I work on the neuroplasticity of the brain to rewire trauma.
Why do you do it?
Because I love people. I'm fascinated by people's behaviours. I'm fascinated by how the world has the ability to impact us, but also how that impacts us in actually a good way. People have this idea that trauma is a bad thing. You want to avoid it at all costs. But I always say, when you're at rock bottom and you have nothing left, all that's left to do is grow. And actually, that's a really powerful place to be. And I don't know about you, Adam, but I've worked with people who are not quite there yet. And they're not quite ready to work on themselves to improve because things are not that bad. You know, they're bad, but they're not bad enough to do a 180 and completely change because they're not at that point. So, yeah, I'm fascinated by people and trauma itself.
I think it's known as the region beta paradox. And I love that. I think it was Chris Williamson was talking to Joe Rogan about it. First time I came across that, where, it's shit hasn't hit the fan yet, but it's going to if you don't change. But people stay stuck there. In your experience, what do you think makes people remain in that state of not wanting to change?
It's the fear of unknown. You know, change itself is very scary, but what people forget is we change every single day without even realising it. And then, you know, a year goes by, we look in the mirror and we don't recognise what we see because we've changed over that year. We can have so much control over what we change into and what changes we bring in, but people are afraid to do that. And I think then you also have that added extra of, well, how and who do I go to? Because there are a lot of people online who are just ripping people off and don't know what they're doing. Let's be realistic with that. But I think it's a matter of, I'm frightened to do this, and who do I go to and what is the process?
I had an interesting discussion with someone a few weeks ago that it's not always the best therapist or the best coach that has the best marketing or salesmanship. And the challenge back to that was, but that happens with musicians. You know, some of the best singers never get heard. I appreciate that, but they're not dealing with trauma. They're not dealing with problematic situations. So I don't know what the answer is, by the way, to this conundrum. And, you know, of course, there is an element, if you're a business owner, you have to become better at marketing and sales and copywriting and what have you, but there's a plethora of amazing coaches out there that don't know how to win clients, and they're the ones that probably have more tools than some of the gurus that have all the answers. I'm sure that you can see a lot of damage from that too. So what I want to focus on before we dive into all this, because I'm fascinated by it, is I want to get to know you a bit better. Okay. Take me back to the early days, the childhood. What was that like?
I had, I'm going to say, a very difficult childhood. That's the best way to describe it. I had a narcissistic mother. The home was very toxic, very chaotic. I grew up very much unloved, felt very unwanted. I moved out of home at 15. That was arguably my saving grace at the time. And you don't know what you don't know, right? And all I knew was that I was never good enough. Mentally, emotionally, physically, and I had to work really hard to try and overcome that, which, again, when we look at trauma and childhood, that experience shaped me into being someone that's very driven and very much, I'm getting this done and I'm not going to let it destroy me. So that was my childhood. Left home at 15, got a really great job training horses for dressage. It was a live-in position. That was amazing. Met a guy at 16, had that relationship that was extremely toxic and volatile. He ended up going to prison for 8 years for what he did to me, to put it in a nutshell. It was abusive on all levels, very physically abusive. And one evening I decided we wasn't going to be together, but this was a pattern. We're finished, we're back together, we're finished, we're back together, and we lived together. And I'd only been with him 6 months at the time. The whole 6 months, it was consistently abusive. And this particular time, he went out on a night out and I said to him, we are done. I am going to be packing my stuff and I'll be moving out. And, you know, I was just 16, so I didn't know any different. My childhood was very chaotic. So living in chaos was very normal for me. And to me, I kind of thought this is normal. You know, it's no different to what I experienced as a child. So this is a normal life. And he came home, got in bed, tried to have sex with me. I said no. And then we got into a fight and he straddled me, strangled me. I pretty much managed to rip his ear off. And then the next minute I know I wake up and I've got blood everywhere. I'm very delirious. I've got his mum shouting at me. I don't know where she came from, saying it's my fault. You've caused this. This is your problem. And then the next minute I'm trying to find my phone, rang the police. I can't even remember. It's a really strange like sensation because I can't remember what I said. I don't even think I said much because you don't know what to say in that moment. It was such a bizarre, it was a normal situation because it was normal, but at the same time I didn't know what I needed or wanted to happen. So I'm sort of on the phone. I know I need help, but I don't know what the next step would be, if any. They left me. The police came in. Again, didn't know what to say to them. A friend of mine came and collected me and took me away. Went to the hospital that night. I got assessed, got treatment. My teeth had been knocked into the roof of my mouth, so I had to have all them reset, black eyes, quite bad bruising on the neck. And it was a nurse that had said to me, should you know, this doesn't have to be your life. And I looked at her, I said, I don't know what you mean. She said, this doesn't have to be your life, you know. There are other options, there are other opportunities. And that's probably, I think we meet people in our lives that give us opportunities to change. And they're 9 times out of 10 strangers, certainly in my experience. And she encouraged me to follow through with the police, which I did, went to court, gave my evidence. Like I said, he got 8 years for that. I think he did 4 in the end, but, you know, that was a win in itself. I went back to training horses at that point, but then I was also going to uni and doing my degree in psychology at the same time. So that's when I sort of realised, okay, there are other options and actually I shouldn't be fully reliant on anyone else. But that situation itself, so I already didn't have much confidence. I already had a very distorted reality of who and what I was. And that, it frightened me. And I was in a position I couldn't look men in the eye. I couldn't have a conversation with people. My body dysmorphic disorder went to a whole nother level. And I was constantly anxious. I had severe sleep anxiety. I was a high functioning stress addict. And my life was like full steam ahead 24/7. A day off felt threatening to me. Got through that. And then I was 20. So I lived like that for probably 4 years, but I was lucky to have really good people around me that I wouldn't say they supported me and said, we need to get you help, but they were there, they were consistent and they encouraged me to achieve, which I did go on to achieve great things in the equestrian world. So that was great. Went out on a night out in London and it was so funny because with the disorder that I had, the body dysmorphic disorder, there were times I wouldn't leave the house and I would take an hour to 2 hours getting ready, the constant interrogation of how I looked. And my good friend said to me, right, we're not doing this today, Rebecca. You're getting ready and we're going out, we're going into London. So she dragged me out. She said, we're meeting a couple of friends up there that I know. I said, are you sure? She said, yep, yeah. I said, they're not men, are they? No, they're not men. So we get to this. It was called Sin Nightclub, this huge 4-story nightclub in Tottenham Court Road. And of course, it was men that she was introducing to me. And I remember that feeling of absolute dread and feeling frozen. And funny enough, I didn't drink then. So I was completely sober for many years, my younger years. It's because I was too frightened of what would happen. Met this guy who then ended up being in an 8-year relationship with. And he was almost a saviour at that point, because if it wasn't for him, I don't know how quickly my perception of men would have changed. He was a big guy and very kind, very softly spoken. And he showed me that there's no such thing as anger when you're with a healthy person. You know, you can be with someone who does genuinely care about you. And I remember we sat on the sofa, similar to you and I are now. My leg was shaking. And he said to me, are you okay? I said, yeah. And I felt okay. He said, something's not right. He said, why is your leg shaking? And I didn't even realise I was doing it. So I stopped my leg and then I started doing stuff with my hands. And it's that high functioning stress, that constantly feeling in a heightened sense of alert that I've been so used to for years, most of my life at that point. So he said, you need to get help with that. You know, he's like, I'm not saying there's something wrong with you, but you need some help. So years of therapy, different therapists that I went through trying to figure out what was wrong with me. And what was a real shame is the question always came back to, but what did you do as a child that caused your mum to treat you the way she did? And that was always, you know, being what I do now for a living, that's the wrong question.
Very damaging question.
Very damaging question. And the turning point for me, I was 28 and I met a shaman. So I've always done yoga. Met a shaman, incredible guy. And he said, I want to help you. I said, what do you mean? There's nothing wrong with me? He said, Rebecca, come on. He said, you're a lovely girl. I want to help you. And it was like he just scooped me up. We did a couple of ceremonial sessions and my whole way of being just shifted. There is no other word to describe it. It was just the massive shift that I've been waiting for. And that's almost then when I felt healed. So 28, yeah, most of my life I hadn't felt healed. There was always something not quite right with me. That's, you know, anxiety, sleeping issues, eating issues, you name it. There was always something. And it just became a moment of peace. I healed my relationship with food. I healed my relationship with my body and how I viewed myself. I could sleep. It was amazing. And then I realised, okay, this is a new chapter that I really need to step into. And I'd done the psychology. I knew a lot about and around that area. And after I'd finished training horses, I moved into teaching yoga. So then I shifted into a slightly different realm. But then I continued my education around other things, neuroplasticity, trauma, went much deeper into these areas. And that was the point when I realised I can talk about things now and I'm not feeling like I want the floor to swallow me up. I can listen to people and not feel affected by what they're saying to me. Whereas prior to that, there is no way I could have spoken about it. And to have this kind of deep conversation with someone wasn't an option. So to have become a therapist then wouldn't have worked. Whereas now, once I hit that point and I started shifting and evolving, I realised, actually, this is where I need to be. And, you know, the reality is we're not going to break generational trauma unless we take a look at ourselves, you know. Could I say that my mother didn't know what she was doing? Sure. You know, there's no rule book on how to raise children. But equally, if you're unwell, you know, if I had children in my 20s when I was in a very, very unhealthy state, I'm bringing a child into an unhealthy environment and I'd need to take responsibility for that. And I realised that unless we educate people and get them to understand these things, arguably nothing is ever our fault because we don't know what we don't know. So until we're put in that situation, we're never going to know. So we have to experience things to then change and grow, going back to what you said. And that's what kind of pushed me in this direction. I realised how much it's affecting people and how much children are being affected nowadays. And that's what drives me. I want to see the divide between men and women come together. I want people to take responsibility for their health. I want people to understand that it's okay to make a mistake as long as we don't keep doing it. You know, unless we all start to collectively change, this is only going to get worse. We're going to see more generations of trauma, more generations of narcissists coming through, because ironically, that's what's kind of bred off the back of it. And that's what drives me with this.
Thanks for sharing all that. There's so much I want to unpack with that. Where I want to start is the connection from the challenges that you experience at a young age through to the abusive relationship. Obviously, the two are sort of interlinked in terms of self-worth and view of oneself, and that this is just normal. This is who I am. This is what happens now. When you obviously started seeing this new guy and then you went to the shaman and stuff like that, was it something that they did, or was it more that you started to allow yourself and give yourself that permission to receive the love that you felt void of?
Exactly what you said, the last bit. It was being in someone who was so calm and so safe. Being in his being, I cannot describe it. And, you know, when I look back now, the people that I was around, none of them really felt safe. And that might be hard to hear for some long-term friends, but, you know, everyone always had something going on, and there was always that little bit of chaos that would come in and make me feel like I'm not safe. And this guy, I mean, I cried, I screamed, I had some very weird stuff going on. I was going to overshare then. But there was a release. And it was like, this is okay, Rebecca, you're human, you know? And yeah, I'm forever grateful. And I think, you know, even when I work with people, recently I had a guy say to me, you know, Rebecca, I feel sorry for you. I feel like I unload on you. I want you to. That's what I want you to do. And we're so taught to not do that. Be strong. You know, my thing was, especially with my mother, oh, you're such a hypochondriac. You know, there's nothing wrong with you. Get up, get on with it. So I was always very, you know, even now, every now and then I'm a bit, because that is self-abuse, telling yourself, just get on with it, there's nothing wrong with you, when actually we should listen more to our bodies.
It's invalidating the feeling, isn't it?
Yeah.
And then when we form a belief, we always look for evidence to back up the belief, because we don't want to lie to ourselves.
Correct.
Right?
Yeah.
So I think I'm unworthy of love. Mum says, get over yourself, you're fine, get on with it. And you go, oh yeah, okay. And then you carry that on. Yeah. And then you keep doing it. And whether it was the eating, whether it was the, you know, not necessarily attracting toxic men, but going into relationships where you probably never really ever felt loved due to the low self-worth, et cetera, it all just feeds back into the emotional anchoring of, that's just me then. This is just who I am and this is how I am and fuck it.
Yeah. And it's, you know, something that gets brought up a lot is, why do women find toxic men so attractive? I'm sure you've heard that question put out a lot. I found a toxic man attractive because I thought he was going to protect me. I thought he'd protect me against my mother, and he would show me that I was better, and he'd make me feel like I've won this golden prize.
When we're at that age, we're probably assuming or associating that anger and authority is what a masculine trait is. Yeah. So you were seeking that, so therefore he'll be able to protect you from an abusive and aggressive mother. Is that about right?
Yes. And could I have reiterated that to you back then? Definitely not. I would have, you couldn't have answered that question. Whereas what you just said there is exactly right. It's the same for men who are damaged. I use that term a lot. It's no surprise they go for women who are like mothers. Right? Because they need that caring. But what often comes with that is that toxicity of toxic femininity, toxic femininity, that comes into that, where they use that as leverage to then get control over a man. So, when we look at toxic masculinity and femininity, the differences are men use violence, that's their antisocial behaviour, is physicality, whereas women use verbals to basically abuse. So they will manipulate to control, whereas men use force to control.
Yeah.
And there's your key differences. But the people who choose these are damaged. That's the reality there.
Yeah, and it's about repairing that inner child that we all have within us, isn't it?
Yes.
And we all have the child state. There's 3 states that we operate from: the child, the adult, and the parent. It's known as transactional analysis, and I know you love the work around that too. When people challenge me on this, say, do you ever honk the horn in traffic and get really angry? I'm like, yeah. Would a rational adult do that? No, probably not. So that's your inner child coming out. Yeah. But this can come out for some people 80 to 90% of the time. Whenever I see someone getting really aggressive, I just think, vulnerable child. And we all show it, right? I'm not professing to be perfect. Of course, we all lose our temper.
Yeah.
But the level of consciousness that I have around it now is, I let myself down yesterday, but that was just younger Adam. That was younger Adam frustrated in the classroom and being misunderstood.
Yes.
That's what I felt like. I was misunderstood most of my life, which can be very challenging for obvious reasons.
Yeah.
So the word toxic, it gets thrown around a lot now. Mm-hmm. However, it exists for a reason. What would you say some of the signs are that you primarily work with men, right? You've done some work with women as well, is that correct?
I work with both genders, but
okay.
Men tend to gravitate towards me.
Yeah, I can see why from the content that you write and how you do things, because it is nurturing, but it is forthright at the same time, and it's honest and it's to the point, and I can 100% see why men resonate with the message. So let's focus on the men first and foremost. What are some of the most toxic traits that men display when it comes to relationships?
It's a deep question, Adam. So let's look at the word toxic first. So we've got to be realistic. Toxic is anything that causes harm. A liquid that's toxic is going to cause you harm. A food that's toxic is going to cause you harm. A woman who's using her femininity in a way that causes you harm is toxic. A man that uses his masculinity in a way that causes you harm is toxic. We're allowed to use that when we feel like someone's caused us harm, and it's based off those kinds of attributes. So what kinds of things would you look for a man? For me, is a man who doesn't take accountability. That's toxic. But then I think that's across the board. So again, we're not looking at gender specifics there. So someone that isn't accountable, a man who leads with anger rather than understanding and kindness. And we've got to recognise that anger is an end range emotion. We don't just go from balance to anger in one split second. Now, some people say, yeah, but I do, Rebecca. And I totally disagree, because if we look back, 9 times out of 10, the bit in the middle is frustration. I'm not being heard. I'm not being seen. I'm not being validated. Listen to me. And then the anger comes out, right? That tends to be the process. And if you're in a relationship that isn't nourishing and meeting your needs, and it's been like that all week, and you've suppressed, and now you're frustrated, guess what comes? Anger. And guess what? That's human. But then you've got to ask yourself, it's like people say to me, but then I'm the problem because I'm angry. But hang on, are you telling me if she listened to you, if she, supported your needs mentally and emotionally, you'd still get angry? No. So it's great to take accountability, but we've also got to have that awareness of, well, what is going on and what's adding to this? Because a lot of people stay in relationships that are toxic. And I think, just to add that caveat, people think unless it's physically abusive, it's okay.
Yeah.
And it's not okay.
I primarily work with men. I do have probably about a 15 to 20% split. The rest is 85 to 80 is men over the time was with this coaching business. And you do see some commonalities, and a lot of them are men over 40. Now, not the biggest challenge, one of the biggest challenges that they have is no sex life. And I understand it's an extremely difficult period of time for women to go through with the menopause and what have you, the one that will, as men never understand, of course. But what I find so interesting is that the biggest commonality is who the partner is hanging around with, because their 3 or 4 friends will say, well, I'm not having sex with mine either. And they go, well, Joanne and, Deborah and Hannah or whatever, they're not having sex with their partners either. So then it gets made out to be a man problem as opposed to a couple problem, because they want the connection.
Yeah.
So I have a client at the moment who he does not everything, but he really goes above and beyond for his partner. If she rings him and says, can you cook me dinner? I'm running late. No problem. Then it comes to get in the bedroom and, could we just do, oh no, not tonight. But his needs are being unmet in that moment.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You're asking a request, you're asking for a need. So can you do the dinner, or can you do the kids' packed lunches, or can you do? And it's always yes, yes, yes. Mm-hmm. When it comes to his request, it's almost like shat all over straight away. Mm-hmm. And then men are made to feel like a pig, air quote.
Yeah.
Because they have sexual or physical needs.
Yep.
Then a lot of the men will go, tell you what then, I'll just go look elsewhere.
Yes.
Then the man's a bastard because of that reason, right?
Yeah.
What are the problems with that? Let's start with that.
I mean, I love this question. I love this topic because this is something I work with couples on as well. And I absolutely love working with couples. So we've got to recognise what you've just said there. That is very much a reality. And 6 to 7 times out of 10, men will cheat for that reason. Now, are they being forced to cheat, and was it a conscious decision? Probably not, because what tends to happen, then, like you said, their needs are not getting met at home. It's not a partnership, it's a one-way street. And it's not that you should be expected to do X, Y, Z to get sex at the end of it. That isn't what we're saying. But you've got to come together as a partnership. And this is what I teach, which is a little bit unethical, shall we say, but you've almost got to treat it like a business, right? You've both got to put in, and you've both got to know what your roles are. Because if you don't know what your roles are, where are we? What are we doing, right? So it's not uncommon for that exact scenario to play out. The guy goes to work. Rebecca comes, puts the hand on the shoulder, goes, Adam, you look great today. All of a sudden, you've been touched, you've been seen, and you've been validated in one hit. Now, all of a sudden, that feeling that you haven't had at home, you want that more. Who's going to give it to you? Rebecca, that's just touched your shoulder. But not even from a sexual context. It doesn't start there. It starts just from feeling seen, heard, and validated, which isn't being met at home. Now, I'm going to stand up for the girls here. Believe it or not, women enjoy sex, okay? But we need to feel a certain way, and we need to be seen a certain way to want to give sex and have that level of intimacy. So it's not as good as to just say, you do everything for me so I can come home and chill. That doesn't make me feel wanted as a woman. That just makes me feel like I've got a slave at home that's doing his role. That's the reality here. You've got to make the decision. This is so important because we all have busy lives, and that's a good thing, right? To have a date night one day or one evening a week, that must be put in the calendar, and you must make time for each other where no phones, no kids, no work. You don't even have to go out for dinner, but it is your time together to appreciate each other and share time. Give yourself that time to really enjoy and nourish each other. If that's put forward where it's all about the woman, when she feels like it's all about her and she's not toxic, you will get what you want, and she will be desiring you. You know, that masculine and feminine energy must be intertwined, and it must be connected. Because if it's not, I could argue the man that's doing everything's in his feminine energy.
Yeah, because people pleasing and just pandering to everything. Yeah.
And guess what? The woman's in her masculine and she's exhausted. So how do we counterbalance that? We've got to look at roles. You've got to look at, okay, what are my roles in this relationship? What do we agree upon? What we're going to do? And when I do couple sessions, they get so uncomfortable with those questions. I don't want to upset anyone. Well, you're upset now, so what's the difference, right?
Forward, yeah. Whenever I have a conversation with anybody, it's never about bashing a whole gender or a whole age range or race or whatever. It's just, and equally not about the individual, because they go, oh, she's just toxic, he's just a narcissist. And it's this strong label where, okay, let's pause. no one's all of everything. No one's all good. No one's all bad.
Yeah.
And I give the extreme example of Vladimir Putin. Yeah. And some people go, oh, like, he's not all bad. His horses don't think so. And they're very intuitive animals. So he obviously does something nice to them. Meaning that, yes, by and large, does he have a lot of very questionable views of the world, of course. So some of his behaviour is absolutely horrendous, of course. Yeah. But if we can go to the nth degree and look at one of the worst dictators in my lifetime, certainly, we can probably do it about John that we work with, or we can do it about an ex-partner and forgive them and move forward, right? So it's so commonly weaponized, is sex, generally speaking. And I think that, to your point there, a lot of the men that are confused by, oh, well, I did the packed lunches and that's it. So where's my blowjob? Where's my hand job? Where's this? Where's that? It's like, it's not a trade-off of 1 + 1 = 2. As you said, I think a lot of it comes down to desire. Does your partner feel desired, men and women? But again, please correct me if I'm wrong here, and I don't want to generalize of all women, but one of the most attractive things from the women that I've spoken to and the studies that I've done is that the man has to have purpose. He has to have something going on outside of you. Not a lot of women like that, probably more down the toxic trait, right?
Yep.
But would you agree with that? That if, for example, let's say the husband has done the dishes and he's done whatever, but then they come back and he's in his sweatpants and a vest watching TV, scratching his bollocks, it's probably not the most attractive thing for the partner to experience, right? So do you feel like it is the purpose-led that is most attractive for women, or do you think there's other things at play?
Competence is attractive, and we've got to be realistic here. Purpose is what pushes someone in their masculine energy. So, what I see with men, certainly over 40, this is the common theme across the board. They all say to me, Rebecca, I don't know who I am or what's the point anymore. I've been a dad, I've been a husband for X amount of years, I've had no sex for 10 years, we've lived in separate bedrooms. They've been bullied. It's been a horrendous relationship. And I feel so much for these guys because they're genuinely great guys. They're great dads. They're kind people. But they're like shells that don't know who they are, what they are, where they should be going in life. And it's building all that back up because they've just been teared down by this woman and made to believe that that's the only thing they've got going for them is being the dad, being the house wife at home, so to speak. And it's where the respect is lost. It's a really powerful thing for a man when he's in his purpose and he's driven and he's living a life on purpose. So I'm not saying you've got to be a CEO, you can just be someone that's in Tesco's working your way up, but that you have purpose and drive and ambition to know where you're going. Men are hunters. They're designed to chase, kill, collect, and that's their reward. There's their trophy, their cooked meal. That's how men work. So it needs to be the same. That point when a woman says to a man, so let's use the Tesco's example, he's worked his way up, he's now going to become an area manager for the store, and she says to him, I don't want you doing that because you're going to be away too much. He needs to be able to say, hang on a minute, we need to reevaluate this relationship because I'm not holding myself back to make you feel better about things. Right? She's got to be on board with that level of growth. You either grow together or you grow apart in a relationship. That's the reality. And I want to be honest, there's nothing wrong if you grow apart, but you've got to be realistic about that. If you're not prepared to go on that journey together, whatever that may be, it's never going to work. And then one of you is going to resent the other. One of you is going to become toxic. Then both of you become toxic. That's the label that's given because it just isn't working anymore. But if you're not growing together and you don't reach that point where you can say to your partner, hang on a minute, this makes me happy. This is what I want. These are my goals. You knew this when you met me. You're either with me or you're against me. What is it? And if at that point you separate, it's a good thing. But if you stay together, she's got to grow with you.
What about people that say, oh, we have to stay together for the kids?
Oh, that's a coward's way out. Yeah. That, I get a lot of stick for this online, a lot of stick, because I know from experience and expertise, that is one of the most damaging things for children. When I talk about generational trauma, you want to teach your child how to abuse. Let's say you're a man, you've got a daughter, and the wife is constantly abusing you. Guess what your child is learning where men are in the hierarchy and they're down here. And how you treat and talk to men is like this. So now you're raising a daughter that believes that is normal, and she's going to become a mirror image of your partner. Do you want that? Of course you don't. But if you separate, this is normal. We are not back in 50 years ago, right? This is very normal. If you have to separate, it is so much better for a child to see at least one couple together that have a loving, connected relationship. You model what your children learn. So if you're going to model being the person that's shouted at, that's abused, My Wife, My Abuser on Netflix.
Oh, yeah.
Fantastic documentary with Richard. And that is classic. That happens more often than people know about. Now, you know, I haven't spoken to Richard, so I'm only going by what I've seen. But that point when she was badgering him to have children, and he was saying, I couldn't even get an erection because I was so unattracted to her and how she used to treat me. I didn't feel like I wanted to have sex with her. So then she made him go down the IVF route. It's not that the man couldn't have children. He couldn't physically have sex with her. So she made him 3 times go down the IVF route. Now, what he should have done is at that point go, I'm out. And I can't bring children into this world with her modelling how to treat people. And that's what we need to take accountability for, because look, we all get it wrong. We all end up in situations that we probably didn't think we'd be in, but it's life. We're human. But having that moment to go, I've got to make this right now. You know, and a lot of guys that I work with, when I do the parallel parenting program, they're at the very start of that journey and they come to me and say, Rebecca, I want to divorce her. I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do with the child. Fine. I just basically they delegate their life to me and I teach them exactly what to do, help them with messages, court formats, etc. So I help them with that process, because I know I've had men say to me, if I didn't have you giving me direction on this, I probably would have killed myself because of how difficult she's being, how I see it affecting my children. I don't know how to handle it, but I've got you saying to me, do this, do that, da, 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 you know.
Yeah, and it's one of the many reasons as to why the epidemic that is suicide is so rife.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because a lot of men, you know, I love this quote, that a lot of men live a life of quiet desperation.
Yeah, they do.
Because if they do speak up, they get called a pig, they get told they're stupid, they get told to man up, toughen up, da-da-da-da-da.
Yep.
Or heard it a million times before. But what would you say the worst cases that you've seen? Obviously, I'm not asking for names, of course not, but what, in terms of the level of abuse that a man has sort of withstood for X amount of time, what was the worst case of trauma from a male perspective?
So the way I'm going to answer this is, there is no such thing as a worst case, because I've had people say to me, Rebecca, I know this probably isn't as bad as what some people have it. We can't put a scale on how much it's affecting you. It's either affecting you or it isn't. And if it is affecting you, that's enough to focus on what you need to do to make it right. There isn't much I haven't heard. Let's put it that way. I've worked with some extremely undesirable people who have sexual preferences that are very undesirable. I'm not going to say it because I don't want to get cancelled, but there's not much I haven't heard, right, to put it in a nutshell. And it's really important that people understand, even if it is just mental and emotional abuse, and there's no physical abuse or no financial abuse, you're still being harmed. You're still affected. And it's not about comparing it to Joe up the road. Oh, well, Joe had it so much worse than what I did, so what am I moaning about? No, moan about it. Moan about it. Moan about it. Feel it. Change it. You know, I had that belief growing up. Well, I haven't got it as bad as some people, but I was still hurting.
I say to people often that it's not the worst thing in the world, potentially, but it's the worst thing in your world.
Exactly.
In that moment. And whether you compare to, you know, Joe Bloggs, who's got the best marriage ever, or whether you compare to the worst relationship you've ever seen, their situations won't change. It'll still be the worst relationship ever, and it'll still be the best relationship ever, regardless of how you perceive it. So I always invite people to look at their own thing, remove anything else. You can observe it, but don't judge it. You can observe your emotions, but don't judge them, and just allow yourself that grace to feel.
Yeah.
Right. So I do want to go back a few steps to the trauma piece, because I find the topic so interesting. I've not studied it to the nth degree. The work that Dr. Gabor Mate does, I think, is fascinating. It's brilliant. And some of the lines out of that episode with Stephen Bartlett's, where I first became familiar with his work, were incredible. And what I found really interesting as well, what you said earlier around your stress, the bouncing of the knee. The first question is, do you think that was a trauma response?
Yes.
And you also referred to the shaman. You said you had some weird things going on with your body. Maybe you didn't want to say it, and I won't say it, but there's a client of mine, and you maybe can quietly nod along if this was relevant for you. They went to get Reiki. And, you know, I think it's quite wishy-washy personally, but I'll get to my story about that in a second as well. And just this little woman, Thai woman, she was about 5 foot tall, you know, tiny little thing. And she just said, it's going to be okay. And she just started like massaging her head. She's like, you can let it all go now. You can just let it go now. And the client, she said, I got home, I had dysentery. Like the whole world fell out of me. So I've never had this permission to just feel. And like you said earlier, be validated, be seen, be heard. And I booked in a massage once at a new place near my house, and I accidentally hit Reiki. I thought I hit full body massage. And it was this lovely, like, older Irish woman, very softly spoken. I'm not going to do the accent. She said, my God, you're hard on yourself. And while that could be generic for everybody, you know, kind of like when you get a tarot card reader and what have you, you know, you could go, well, that applies to literally everyone. Yeah. But it was the way she delivered it, and she was just like, you can just stop being hard on yourself now. We can just let that go. Honestly, a little tear went down my eye, because I was like, I'd never, ever, and I've got quite a loving, nurturing mother, and I've got a lot of great family around me. I've never heard it in such a way, just like, you can just let that pass now, it's okay. So you don't need to be so hard on yourself. And I'm like, fuck. And again, it's that permission piece. It's almost allowing yourself to be loved, isn't it? Yeah. So, but yeah, going back to you. So that sort of trauma response, what is trauma? The actual definition, not the Oxford Dictionary of definition, but in your professional.
The easiest way I describe trauma is as an experience that's happened to you that's changed you mentally and physically.
Okay. So it's a term that gets thrown around a lot. Oh, that was so traumatic. Yeah. And it sort of rolls off the tongue. Yep. Right? So what are the differences? Obviously, we're not getting into the people that are the hypochondriacs that just come out with blanket statements, but how have you seen that impact people's health?
The easiest way I describe this, you're driving in a car, you have a head-on collision, you both get out of the car, you and the other person. It's not that bad, but you might have a bit of backache. You can get back in the car and drive off. The other person is so shaken up, they're physically shaken, they've been physically sick. They are so traumatized by what they've experienced, they can't get back in the car. Now, to add on to that, because that would then be defined as a traumatic experience. Now, they might be able to work and just get over that so they can get back in a car. But let's say they don't. And that trauma gets wired a little bit tighter into the brain. So let's say your car's red that they hit, a red BMW. Now they're a passenger in a car because they can't drive. They're so traumatized they can't drive without shaking and being sick. They're a passenger in the car goes around the corner and there's that red BMW that looks just like your car, and they start having an absolute panic attack in the car. They can't breathe, they're being sick, they're crying, the body's shaking, they've had a complete shutdown. Now, same experience, because you've both had a head-on collision, you've both arguably walked away unharmed, but you've been able to go, yeah, that was all right. Yeah, I'm all right. We're safe. We're all good. Yeah, car's a bit damaged, whatever. Whereas the other person's been traumatized by that experience. Now, same incident. What's the difference? Past life experiences and personality type comes into that. So if you're someone that's had a very safe childhood and you've been very nurtured and you've been raised in a way that's very realistic, I'm going to say, you're realistic in the fact that accidents happen. You know, we all have accidents. You've been raised that it's okay. As long as no one's hurt, it's okay. And that's been wired into your subconscious. So you've had the accident, you've got out, you've gone, yeah, a bit achy, but everyone's okay. This is okay, fine. Whereas the other person's been raised on eggshells. Everything's a problem. They're already heightened. They're already in, like how I was back in my early 20s, late teens. Things like that would frighten the life out of me back then, and they would re-trigger me. So experiences affect everyone differently. Some people will have trauma as a result of that experience, others don't. This is a bit of a dark example, but rape victims and people that have been trafficked or prostitutes or escorts, anything along those lines, I've worked with women like this multiple times, so I can speak about this. They have to develop a new identity to do that job, so to speak. But they lose their own identity by doing that. So their trauma has developed a complete, full-on armour of who they should be and who they need to be to cope with what they're experiencing. That's how their experience shaped and changed them, and how their trauma shows up by having a completely different identity. Might have a split personality, borderline personality disorder, narcissistic, all different things that could come off the back of that.
So interesting. Do you think it's something that ever properly leaves you, or do you think it's something that's there, even if it's 5 to 10% for the rest of your life when you go through a traumatic experience?
I'm going to speak personally, and I'm going to say yes. For me, it doesn't, all what I went through, I don't know if you've seen me post about this, but I'm not someone that posts a lot about my story, because I'm very much a believer in it's my past, it no longer affects me. I don't need to talk about it. And if you keep talking about things and bringing it into your present, guess what? It is your present and it will come into your future. So part of that healing process is you have to be able to say, that's no longer me. That's my past. Obviously, I can't speak for everyone. And the clients I've worked with that maximum 6 months to do the rewiring, I rarely see them again, which is great. And they say to me, Rebecca, I'm thriving. I've got a healthy relationship. I never thought I'd have a relationship like this. You know, do they occasionally say to me, I get a little bit triggered? Yeah, but the difference is they don't spiral. And being able to go, like the car, that example, red BMW, yeah, I'm not in the car, it's fine. And having that process in place to know how to deal with it, it's really powerful.
So you're more just aware of it. And again, I know you talk to your own experience here, so you're just aware of it. You know it exists, you're not ignoring it, but you just have the techniques now to be able to allow it to pass.
I rarely get triggered. I can't remember the last time I was actually triggered. I genuinely can't. I recently found out, I'll share this with you, my long-term ex who I was with for 8 years, my knight in shining armour, let's say. I recently found out he was actually living a double life while he was with me, and he was married and he had more children with the woman who I thought was his ex. I recently found that out, I don't know, 4 months ago, something like that.
Holy shit.
Yeah. But I've been separated from him for 10 years now. And I found out, and do you know what? I was disappointed. I wasn't angry. I didn't feel triggered. I didn't feel like I needed to get revenge. There was no response that was unwarranted or uncontrollable. I just felt betrayed and disappointed, because out of everything I'd been through, the one thing I never thought he'd do was cheat on me, and arguably living a double life, that's far worse than cheating, right? Yeah. You know, go out and have a one-night stand.
It's an interesting approach to life, yeah, for sure, yeah.
But again, arguably, I think if I'd have found that out, let's say 2 to 3 years after we separated, I think I probably would have been savage. Is the, you know, and that would have been a triggered response. But I wasn't. And I just thought, do you know what? Yeah, it's a shame. I'm disappointed and I feel betrayed by you. You know, 8 years of my life I gave to you and you couldn't just let me go.
Yeah. Do you think that's a testament to the work that you have done on yourself, though?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, very much so. Yeah.
Triggered. Again, that word, along with toxic, along with whatever, it's so overused. What does it mean?
So, an unhealthy response that causes issues.
Thank you for summing that up. So everyone else that says I was triggered that the train was late or that somebody did whatever is probably not a very accurate response, right? Probably a disproportionate response.
Unless they're having an absolute breakdown and they're crying and they're uncontrollable, then I'd say, okay, they've probably triggered by the train being late.
That's about it. Yeah, for sure. I think that the work that you're doing with people is just absolutely awesome. With the challenges that come with it, though, there is a trade-off, right? And I experienced this in my early stages of coaching. I love the victories and I love the transformations, but with that, there's a lot of really difficult shit that people go through.
Yeah.
Did you or do you find it difficult to disassociate from the challenges that people come to you with?
Okay, I'm going to share a secret. So I have a little process that I do. It's a bit woo-woo, so brace yourself.
Okay.
So I have a piece of black tourmaline, which is a protection crystal. And before I have a call with someone, I hold the black tourmaline and I just imagine myself with a gold egg around me, like a shield. So I can work with people, but what it does is it repels anything negative that's going to sit in my being. That's what I do. The only time I really struggle with it, and I'm going to take that back. The only time I struggle with it, not really, but struggle, is when I don't stick to my boundaries. So I only work maximum 15 people a week at a push, maximum, because it is intense. And if I'm doing the parallel parenting, that's a maximum of 3 because they have access to me 24/7. So even when my clinic's finished, they might be messaging me in the evening or in the morning or the weekends because they need support and they get that from me. So if so normally I work Tuesday, Wednesday and Thursday to fit everyone in. So a maximum of 5 a day. If I go over that because I have an emergency, it's dangerous territory for me because I feel very much so drained. I get very passionate about things, like especially my parallel parenting people that I work with, because there is that frustration of we're dealing with people who have zero interest in their children. That is not what they're doing all this bullshit, quite frankly, for. It is just to upset the other parent and make them look bad. They're not taking them to court because they have genuine welfare concerns for their child. They're taking them to court to try and make out the mother or the father is something wrong with them. And I know that child is going to suffer as I did. And I can feel that. And I think to myself, no. And that then drives me. So recently, one of my clients, I was really disappointed, but it's not the end of the road. She had her case dismissed that we had created, but it will be going back. And I'm hoping that we can get enough evidence to get what's right for her little girl because, that's what bothers me with it. So I get very passionate around those times. I would say I'm quite difficult to be around because all I think about is getting results there and driving and pushing that.
Does it come at a cost? The giving you all to people and being all things to everyone?
I don't know how I want to say this. I guess the only thing that is missing for me in my life is having someone that I can share to a degree what's going on. That I don't have a partner. I have friends, but no one close enough that I can ring up and just rant to. But then also I'm not that sort of person either. And my friends know that. They're very much aware that I deal with things on my own. So it would be nice to be able to, at the end of the day, sit down with a partner or a friend and just say, I can't believe what I've heard today. And not even go into detail because I wouldn't overshare, but just be heard, like soundboarding. And that would be enough for me.
Yeah, I found it challenging at first because I hadn't done all the necessary work on myself first. So, you know, I was listening to some truly horrific shit. And it wasn't that I felt like an imposter that I couldn't handle it because I'd managed people in hospitality for years. So I'd heard some pretty horrific shit over the years. Anyway, I just had a coping mechanism and I knew that in that moment I wouldn't fail them. I'd just listen and hold the space. But then afterwards, it would really affect me, you know, hearing the son was so terrified of his father, he used to wet the bed up until the age of 8 or 9, and the father would come in and shove his face in it. Things like that you hear are just, unfathomable, really, that a human being could do that to somebody else, let alone their own child. This is now a 38-year-old man who is still terrified of his father, even though he's got dementia and he's in a home and what have you, and he still won't go see him, and all this other truly awful stuff that you hear. And yeah, I found it quite challenging. I think that the boundaries piece is interesting. I think people lack boundaries because they people please, and they people please due to low self-worth.
Yeah, I agree with that statement. I'm very much results driven, and I'm not afraid to say to someone, I don't know how to help you. And if I don't know how to help you, I'll find someone who can help you. I have no problem saying that to someone. And I always know, like I said, there's not much I haven't heard. And I hear these things, and I have to be poker face when they're telling me, because I cannot influence them in any way, shape or form, especially when I do my method, because it's going to be counterproductive. So I am poker face and I'm listening, but as I'm listening, I'm already formulating how to rewire it, how to change it, how it's not going to become an issue. So I think that also helps repel it for me, because I know how they're feeling, what they're experiencing. This is a moment in time that I'm going to help them with, and it's not going to be an issue. And I think that really helps me as well.
Narcissism.
Yeah.
People use the word, he's just a narcissist or she's just a narcissist, etc. And again, I think it's almost become like a bit of a buzzword. And I think people misuse it or overuse it. Again, what is it?
We all have narcissistic traits and tendencies. If you're human, you have it. That's the reality. Children are highly narcissistic. So narcissism is all about being self-centered. Children need your attention constantly. You know what it's like if you ignore a child, they throw a tantrum. Because it's got to be all about them for good reason, and that's for evolution, right? So with narcissism, it exists on a scale. So we've got to be realistic here. And the way that I describe this in my book is we've got healthy narcissism at one end, and we've got the clinical fixed narcissistic personality at the top end. And then we've got kind of the levels in the middle. So healthy narcissism is someone who has a healthy sense of self and is able to direct that, but not necessarily use it to create harm. So if someone takes what you say or do the wrong way, you're able to counter that in a way that tries to give them clarity without intentionally wanting to harm them, to show yourself to be someone better. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does, yeah.
So that would kind of be your healthy, in a nutshell. And then what happens? So let's say your friend Sally works at a BMW garage, and Sally's just been given a promotion, and Sally's become a bit of a dick, right?
Fuck you, Sally.
Yeah. What's actually happened is Sally's become more narcissistic. She all of a sudden thinks that she's superior to everyone else. She feels entitled to boss people around and tell them what to do. She's lost that sense of empathy and compassion, because it's all about what she wants and looking the best in this. Now, if you could get to Sally and say, hey, Sally, come on now. You're being a bit of a dick. And Sally goes, yeah, do you know what? You're right. I let the power get to my head a little bit. You can regress those traits. Okay? So now we're moving back down the ladder. But let's say Sally says to you, oh, Adam, shut up. What do you know? You're just jealous because, I've been given the promotion and I'm going to be running the whole of Leeds, whatever, Sally's going up. She's intensifying those traits and tendencies, right? And that's when you've got to be realistic and go, yeah, do you know what? Sally's not my person anymore, and I'm not going to give her any more of my time because she is becoming more narcissistic. Her behaviors become toxic because it's causing me harm, because she's not empathetic. She has no compassion. And this is all about her. Now, when we reach the top end of the spectrum, because I believe from what I've studied, I know narcissism intensifies through childhood. Like I said, we can either suppress it or we can grow it, if you like. Nature nurture also comes into this. You need to have a certain personality type to make it a little bit more fixed and rigid. But equally, if you're being raised and you're having narcissistic behavior modeled, it becomes like a second language for you and it becomes normal, right? Something called epigenetics. I won't get too deep into that, but basically it's a gene. We know the warrior gene, when that switches on, we're heading towards that way. So if the child has that gene and it gets switched on, this is why I say don't stay for the child, because if you can get them out of that and you nurture them and they have that gene, they're not going to switch.
Right.
Right? Mm-hmm. So as that grows, what happens with narcissism, the core component of a narcissist is they're very damaged individuals. A bit like what I was saying with the sex workers, they develop this armour. Exactly the same things happen. But what this armour does, this armour is very robust in deflecting everything. And underneath it, they feel so broken that they have to inflate themselves to fill the armour. And they do this by harming other people. So when they can manipulate and they get one up or one over on that person, they feel big again. They feel inflated. You know, that's what it's all about for a narcissist. It's winning at all costs. When we go back to the parallel parenting, they just want to win. They don't want the child. They just want to be the one to win and see they've hurt you and they've caused you harm and they've got the power to do that. That's what a narcissist is. So when it gets that fixed NPD end range, so narcissistic personality disorder, from experience, because I've worked with 3 of those that have been clinically diagnosed, there's not much room for change. So again, when we go back to that in relationships, yeah, I don't like that, I'm out. And pulling away before we get in too deep.
That was going to be my next question. How do you spot it? How would someone that's in a relationship where they might be labeling their partner as narcissistic, they might have read a little book on it or seen a few videos online. How do you spot narcissism in a relationship?
A great question. So I've got a book, Taming Toxic Egos. I go into a lot of detail in that book about this. Now, I'm going to be honest, narcissism is on the rise and narcissists are learning. So as much as we're learning how to spot them, what are red flags, green flags, so are narcissists. And remember, they are designed to win. So if they can convince you they're not a narcissist, if you say to them, I think you're a narcissist, I don't like your behaviour, you've just set them a huge challenge.
And they'll flip it on you.
Yeah. And the chances are they will now bring out their toolbox, the narcissistic toolbox, and they will now push to win that challenge. My answer is always the same. We can't indefinitely say someone is a narcissist or label someone as anything, right? But what we can say is they're toxic. What they've said, what they've done to me has harmed me, and they are toxic. Therefore, I'm out. And that is a position we all need to get in. Going back to that generational trauma, what I said at the beginning, if we can be in a position where we have that level of emotional intelligence, where we have that awareness and understanding and confidence to say, yeah, do you know, Adam, I don't like the way you keep talking to me, and you deflect it and mirror it back to me. And I go, yeah, do you know what? I'm making the right decision here. I'm stepping away. Being able to do that and convict to it and stick to it, that's a whole different ballgame. And then it doesn't matter. It won't matter whether they're narcissistic or not. You're protecting yourself and you're making good decisions.
Yeah, because then what will happen is, I've seen this numerous times, the narcissist, because they like to win, will therefore change their behaviour short term.
Yep.
Bring you back in.
Yep.
And then you're stuck in this cycle of break up, get back together, break up, get back together, and they change for a little bit. I say all the time, the best apology is changed behaviour. You can use the words all you want, but I need to physically see it and understand it. And then it comes back to the decision again of low self-worth. Do I escape? Do I not? They show me love again. We're having more sex than ever before. But then they withdraw again just to keep you on side. It's, So
what you said there, so again, in the book, I go into quite a lot of depth about this, but narcissism's been split and given more categories as time's gone on. And one of the categories is sexual narcissism. Now, female narcissists use sex to manipulate early on. I had someone say to me once, Rebecca, it was like circus sex. And Adam, I'm there thinking poker face right now. And I'm also thinking, I want to explore that. And then I'm thinking,
did the elephant come out? I don't know what's happening.
Yeah, and then I'm thinking, no, back in the room. So I didn't explore it. But it's the same story. The men claim these women are phenomenal in bed. They've never experienced it, which makes them crave. When we talk about the hunters, they're craving that and they want it more and they want to win that. They want the trophy because you guys, that's what it is, right? Women say to me, Rebecca, he was so boring. I say, right, it's a good sign. But no, I'm looking for that spark. I'm looking for the fairy tale, the romance. You're looking for a narcissist because that's what you're used to. If it's too good to be true, it is. Because healthy people are in a secure attachment style and what they're looking for is compatibility. They're not looking to trigger you. They're not looking to get their ego fed. They just want a connection. So they're not going to go there, turn up with a bottle of champagne and flowers, you know. They're just, hey, how's it going? Like they're trying to connect with you. And the women who are used to toxic men, they say to me, it's so boring. I say, because he's safe and you're not used to it.
I literally know someone really well that you're talking about here. And I'm like, oh my God, that is them. Not because they're a narcissistic, horrible person. They had challenges in their childhood. The father abandoned them basically at the age of, I think, 6. But the association still, even though she's 30 plus, is all men are bad. You know, men are bastards, very heavy on the feminist movement and what have you. And I've had a lot of discussions with her in the past. So look, by the very definition of what the word feminism means, I'm a feminist. I want men and women to be equal. That's what it means. That's what it is.
Yeah.
Bashing men and saying all men are X or all women are X is completely false. But you've got, again, back to the belief system, you've got enough evidence to back up your belief because you go on a date, you go for the 6'3" guy that's jacked and he's covered in tattoos and a nice beard and all this, and he treats you well and he says all the right things and he sleeps with you and he doesn't call you again. See, all men are bastards. So it fits the narrative.
Yeah.
And they'll go on a date with Joe Schmo, who might be, you know, again, 6'3", but has a nice shirt on. He's very politely spoken and he pulls out your chair and, oh, fucking hell, Joe's a right bore. And you're like, no, he's not. He's just a nice guy. And you've now associated negativity to something that's actually quite positive for you. Do you feel that's, again, back to the self-worth piece, though? Like, I don't deserve to have the nice guy. So maybe it's a subconscious thing or an unconscious thing that they're actually rejecting them. Or do you think it is just so deeply ingrained in their own narcissistic tendencies?
There's quite a lot to unpack with what you said there. So that behaviour in itself is not necessarily narcissistic. The first thing I'm going to say, avoidant attachment styles. When we talk about attachment styles, avoidance will behave in that way. So there's not a crossover, but people get them confused between avoidance and narcissists because they present in the early stages very similar. The lady that you spoke about, there's so many things it could be. But again, I would say to you, she's not healthy. When you have those kind of ideologies that all men are assholes or whatever it may be, if it's toxic, it's consuming you and you are putting out that energy. Now, I believe energy attracts. If you're toxic, you're going to attract toxic. And it doesn't mean that you're a narcissist. It means you're someone that's broken. That's the reality here. And you're looking for someone to fix you subconsciously. This isn't something we think logically about and go, yeah, that's a good idea. Let's go for the toxic man with all the tats. No, you don't do that. It's a subconscious thing and it's an attraction thing. Some women, like this happens a lot, women who are very much broken, like you said, that low self-esteem, they want to win the guy who's unattainable because then that completes them. It subconsciously, I've been the one to do it. I've been the one to make him settle down, stop sleeping around. I've been the one to do that. You should never get your self-worth off of someone else because you are always going to be seeking external validation, which is very dangerous.
The key is in the phrase, right? Self-worth.
Correct.
Worth of oneself. And people say to me, I've got low self-esteem, esteem of oneself. I'm like, well, it's so easily built, but it's so easily destroyed.
Yeah.
Self-esteem can be built by saying, I'm going to go to the gym tomorrow, and you go for 20 minutes. Congratulations. I refer to it as self-esteem points.
Yeah.
If you keep false promising yourself, let's say you are unfit and you're struggling with your weight or you're drinking too much and you want to make changes, and then you go, right, that's it. I'm going to get my gym gear. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. I'm going to do the other. Then you don't, and you go, see, That's why I don't do it, because I'm just fucking worthless. And it's so easily gained, though. It's not frustrating because it affects my day. It's frustrating because you have that unbelievable level of empathy and compassion for others, and you want to see them free from suffering. So while it's out of my control, it still does hurt a bit, because you know how simply, not easily, it could be solved on the right journey.
Yes.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, totally agree with you. Yeah.
Okay, so on the topic of narcissism, let's say someone's been in that and they've identified it, they've done the work, they've gone to a therapist, What are the next stages of healing, would you say, in your professional opinion, of how to recover from being in a narcissistic relationship?
Unpopular opinion coming from a therapist, you need to go to therapy. That is the reality.
A good therapist.
Yeah, you need to find someone who specialises in what it is you're struggling with. You also need to feel like you can relate to that person and they understand you. I can't express that enough. I always do consultations. I don't know if you have the same process before someone signs up. And that's for both of us. It's a full-on assessment. And I'm very honest. I think I've done it twice where I've said to people, sorry, I can't help you. But then I've recommended someone else. But when you're on those calls, you need to be asking yourself the question, does this person understand me? Because if they don't, they're not going to help you. Do they have expertise in what they're talking to me about and what I'm struggling with? Do they seem to know it inside out? Are they giving me little nuggets where I can feel it? If the answer is yes, then go with that person. That's the reality here. In terms of healing, so in my book, I have healing processes in the back. First thing we need to learn is our values. So we need to rebuild. So when you're with a narcissist, they strip away your identity. They have to do that because they have to give you a new one. And that new one is normally slave.
Dependency.
Yeah, totally. So what you need to do is rebuild now. So we need to look at your values system. And I think everyone needs to do this. When you look at your values, you start to understand who you are and what's important, but then also, how do those values show up in other people? How would I know, for instance, that you value honesty? Because that's a value I have. So I want someone that has the same kind of values realistically. So I need to understand myself, how I show up with honesty and how other people show me they value honesty. Because without understanding the two, you're in limbo, right? So we've got to get our values really tight. The second thing is we've got to look at standards. And the problem is when you've been in a narcissistic relationship, your standards are low because you believe that's where you should be. And you're waiting for someone else to pick you up and put you on the right track. It's not going to happen. You've got to be the one to do that. So then you've got to make the decision, right, I'm raising my standards. And this is, again, I hear it a lot. Women have too high standards nowadays. Do you know what, guys? Raise your standards, everybody, right? Men, women, just get them up and see the difference. Raise your standards, know what you bring to the table. So learn more about yourself. And then the next thing is boundaries. So we hear this thrown about a lot. Got to set boundaries. Okay, when do boundaries fail? When people don't have a consequence. And I often have people say to me, what does that even mean? Simple one is, if you're going to continue to message women online, even in a friendly capacity, and they're all half naked and you don't know them, we are done. So the boundary is, if you do that, we're finished. That's the consequence. How many people do you think follow through with the consequence?
I'm going to guess a very small percentage.
And then they say to me, Rebecca, boundaries don't work. So, did you leave them? Well, no. Well then. Boundaries work when people understand that's the line. And if you cross it, there's no going back from that. And sometimes, just because someone does a behaviour that's undesirable, I'm going to say, like using that texting girls. I had a guy recently who I'm working with who said to me, I genuinely didn't think it was a bad thing because for me, it just boosted my ego a little bit and I knew I was never going to meet them. But his partner didn't like it. I'm like, okay, so did you stop? Well, yeah, he said, because I knew she was going to leave me and she did. And then I begged her back and then I've not done it since. So sometimes people need that boundary as a reminder to go, yeah, do you know what? I was being a dick. It's time to change that.
Yeah.
You know?
We're always teaching people how to treat us.
Yes.
And I think that the only person that likes a boundary is the one that's setting them at first.
Yeah,
of
absolutely.
Course. But you're teaching them a new way of how to behave. And, because you do get what you tolerate, do you think there's a bit of grace period with it so they can start adjusting? Or is it in the examples that you've seen, do you have to see that instantaneous response that they're at least trying to get the boundary right, perhaps?
So another thing we need to add in there is communication. So a lot of people lack good communication skills. You need to be able to communicate clearly what your problem is and what you want the outcome to be. If I just, going back to that example, if I was in that position, I just said to, my guy, I hate that. You've got to stop it. I hate it. Okay, you're just being a bit possessive. That's what he'll think. But if I said to him, look, what you're doing really hurts me. It makes me feel like you don't love me. It makes me feel like you don't want me. That really upsets me, you doing that. Which one do you think is going to have the bigger impact? The second one. So when we're able to communicate how things are affecting us, we're then also testing that person's character. Because if that person's a genuine, kind, empathetic person, but they're just been a bit of a dick, what they're going to do is go, oh, I had no idea. I am so sorry. And then they have an opportunity to change. But if they're not that person and they are toxic, and let's add the word narcissistic into this, they're just going to be like, yeah, whatever. Let's see what you do then. And it's a test then. And of course, if you stay, you've just given them permission to get worse and to test you even more and to push you even more. So that's then when, again, this person's not right for me because they're harming me. Their behaviour's toxic and it's harming me. We all do things wrong. A mistake is a mistake once, providing we don't do it again, right? We're designed to make mistakes. Make them, learn from them, change them. Yeah,
I love that. I saw a post of yours a few weeks ago, which it made me smile because I looked at that as true vulnerability. People think that just spilling the guts all over the internet is vulnerability. And in some cases it's not, it's attention seeking and what have you. But the post was around asking a guy out in the supermarket for his number.
Yeah.
Can you just tell us about that story?
Oh, okay. Oh, God. So, okay, hands up. I test a lot of things. So if I'm being completely honest about that, my mindset was this is a test. Now, did I find him attractive? Oh, yeah. But I think if I had the mindset of, oh my God, he's amazing. I really want his number. Oh, I hope he doesn't say no. And overthought that, I probably wouldn't have done it. But I was working with clients and I think we'd had a similar conversation or it was around the guys saying, I wish things would go back to the old days when people would talk in person. And I thought, it was in my head and I just saw him. I thought, oh, he is lovely. And then I thought, right, come on, Rebecca, let's test it. Let's test the theory. And I did. I just marched over there. I went, oh, excuse me. I said, could you get me that bread up there, please? And he did. He got me the bread and I just went, you're really lovely. I said, are you single? And he sort of did this.
Candid camera's going to come out somewhere, yeah.
He went, oh, I've got a girlfriend. I went, oh, doesn't surprise me. I was like, oh, thanks for the bread. Then off I went. And it made me giggle. It didn't make me think I've been rejected. I didn't feel any loss. I think because I'd done it from let's test this. Let's just have a go and see what happens.
Gamify it almost.
Yeah. And I think that was the difference for me. But again, you've got to be confident in your communication. If I just walked straight up to him and went, are you single?
I think he would think it's probably a TV show of some description, wouldn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I've heard men online say, oh, I've asked for women for their numbers in gyms and they all give me a funny look. Well, of course, because you're just asking for their number. You must have communication and social skills. And, let's go back to the days that everyone seems to miss in a nightclub where you approach people in person. You would have dressed up on your night out. You want to look your best. When we look at profiles online, 9 times out of 10, hate to say it, guys, your pictures are crap and you look crap. Dress up a little bit, at least show one where you're in a nice outfit, because I guarantee you have that outfit, but because you haven't got out on a night out for a while, you haven't got it out the wardrobe and you haven't worn it. So on a night out, we do go off visual appearances first, because guys have said to me, that's the problem with dating apps. It's all, first appearances. Well, guess what?
Of course, yeah. You're not going to buy a house that's like an absolute shithole, are you?
Exactly.
Or go on holiday to a horrible hotel.
Yeah. So you got to be dressed right, first of all. Second of all, if you walk up to someone in a bar and you just go, hi, guess what they're going to say? Hi.
Hi, yeah.
So when you message someone on an app and go, hi, guess what they're going to say? Hi. You've either got communication and social skills or you haven't. And if you haven't got them, work on them, because they're easy to develop. Tart yourself up a little bit. I'm going to stand up for the guys here now. I've seen women's profiles where they're so overdone, filtered up to the eyeballs, and you're not doing a true representation of yourself. So there's a problem again.
Yeah.
There's problems on both sides.
Of course, that's it. I spoke to a behavioural sort of psychologist, and she was talking around. She did like dating and stuff as well. And that's where I got the purpose thing from. But she said, do you know the most attractive thing for a woman is, Adam, from all the women I've worked with? She's coached like thousands of people. Men that smile.
Yes.
I was like, I was quite taken aback by that. And she says, what the woman's looking for is to not just feel safe, but to see that you've got your shit together. And if you're stood, because all the films will say it's the Ryan Gosling at the corner of the bar and he's smouldering with his cool whiskey and all that. We said, if you can see someone not necessarily dancing around like a pillock, but they're just so comfortable in who they are, and they're gesticulating and they're confident and all that. And I know there's a nature versus nurture thing, right? Just be confident. But what do you mean? Oh, put your shoulders back.
Yeah.
Speak clearly. Make sure you are articulating yourself. Make sure that, you're getting your point across as best you can. Be very direct without being an arsehole, yada, yada, yada. Yeah. Those are all basic points of how to become more confident. But yeah, there's a lot of men that I've seen, and, there's some people very close to me that I won't mention if they watch this back. They always apologise for walking in the room. Their body language is slightly like this. And it's that subtlety of looking down, and then they start what's referred to as pecking, when they're talking to the girl, and they'll go in like that, and then they'll sit back and they'll go in again and keep leaning in. Yeah. Just stand back, let the woman come to you.
Yes.
Just be confident in who you are, you know. But there's something that I did ages ago before I met my partner, just going to get that in there, that it was something I saw online. I thought I'll give it a go. And it's what my former coach or mentor used to refer to as doing one-a-days. And one-a-days are brilliant. And I'd highly encourage you to start doing this, by the way, for anyone watching it back. It's just doing one thing that's really nice every day. Yeah. So this could be buying a homeless person a sandwich, helping someone with the luggage off the train, giving up your seat for someone, let them out, even as basic as letting people out at junctions. Yes. Whenever we used to go somewhere in the car, we used to set off 45 minutes in advance, because he'd let everyone out of junctions, and he said it'd always be, I'd rather be an hour early than a minute late, and yada, yada, yada. Yeah. But he said, right, your task this week is to not do it about things or possessions, it's to do it about compliments. Oh. I was like, okay, go up to strangers and compliment them this week. Because he kept pushing me out of my comfort zone. I was like, oh my God, this is awful. It was like, but so anyway, I used to, I'd go up to like a guy in the gym. I'd be like, mate, you're absolutely smashing it. Well done. And some people, of course, not everyone's going to like it. Fucking up. But most people are like, oh, yeah, thanks, mate. That's great. A girl, unbelievably attractive in a bar. And I just was like, can I just say, the energy that you're radiating off you right now is unbelievable. And she's like, what? Because she's so used to probably people going up to her going, oh, nice tits, love, or whatever, or just trying it on or grabbing her ass without fucking solicitation of it. I just said, yeah, the energy you're giving off is just amazing. And I didn't do it to get anything reciprocated or whatever, but that did draw her to me, and we started having a conversation and what have you. So it's just being a bit more intentional with, as you alluded to there, about your ask or about what it is that you're trying to deliver, in that moment. And I think that it does breed more confidence. It makes you realise that not everyone's going to turn around and try throw a drink over you or call you an arsehole. Yeah. But yeah, for someone that is struggling in the dating world, let's say, for argument's sake, then just doing little things like that, I think will go a long way. Compliment, a genuine compliment, right? Yeah. Yeah. Why do you think more people don't do it? The walk up to someone in a supermarket.
Lack of skills. People say to me, oh, it's rejection. Rubbish. Yeah. Rubbish. It's lack of skills. And again, we've got to pay attention to what we're lacking in. When we talk about change, like we said earlier in the beginning of this, we change every single day. You have the power over what changes you make. Those tips, 1 a day, love that. So simple. What do you think that's going to do for your confidence? So much.
Yeah, because if you work on the skill and you practice the skill, you'll therefore become more confident after doing the skill.
Yeah.
It sounds really straightforward, but it is. And if you are more intentional about the content that you're consuming, as you alluded to earlier with the therapist piece, be very honest and say, right, I've got a problem with my weight or whatever. Great. So is it a weight problem so you need to go to a PT, or is it an eating disorder problem that you need a specialist with? Oh, shit. Because you can go to the PT all you want and you can get flogged 3 or 4 times a week. But if you're not dealing with the actual root cause of the weight gain, which is the shame eating, which is the overeating, which is the stress eating, you know, this is something that I had for probably about 30 years of my life until I started working on it about a year ago. It's the same with this. Be very intentional with what it is you're trying to get out of it. How can I become more confident when approaching women?
Yeah.
How can I be more confident when on a date with a man?
Yeah.
You'll find it if you actually type it in and you look for the book or the speaker or the podcast or the YouTube video. So it's been much more specific as opposed to saying, help me with confidence. Help me with confidence when it comes to communication with Joe Blogs, right?
Yeah. So I spoke to a guy from LinkedIn. We had a consultation call a few weeks ago, and on the call, he actually said to me, "Do you know, Rebecca, it's really refreshing to talk to someone who isn't just trying to sell." And I said, I kind of take that as a compliment. I said, but that's my biggest downfall. I said, because I'm not a salesperson and I want it to be right for everyone. And I think it's important that people realise there's so much choice out there. And people who are genuine, I believe this, they want you to be happy with your decision. So if you say to them, I just want to go away and think about this, providing you've answered all their questions and they just need to think, I think you should let them do that. And if someone pushes, to me, that's a red flag.
Yeah.
You know?
That's it. It's finding the harmony, isn't it, between it all, because sometimes that I think about it, it is just an objection to overcome. You know, sometimes it would be I'm always agreeable in those moments and say, absolutely, of course you need to think about it, you know. Out of curiosity, what is it you want to think about?
Yes.
I don't know. It's just because we've gone over everything. You understand the pricing structure, and at the beginning of the call, you said that you're in a position to invest and you're looking to do it. So I'm just curious, what is it that you are wanting to think about? Because I might be able to answer it for you now.
Yeah.
It's that sort of reframe. And then people will go, oh, I guess it's just, then you can go into a negative, not as a strategy, but you could say, what I'm hearing is that maybe you're not ready to take this. No, I am. It's because of, and then they start telling you the real reasons to what it is. Is it the price? Yeah, it's a little bit about the price, right? Okay, maybe we could look at doing a reduced service for a reduced whatever.
Exactly.
Yeah. So exactly to your point, that it's just, everything is skill based and you have to be very specific about that to get your outcome. To round up here, what does it mean to you to be on your A game?
You couldn't give me a heads up on that. So for me to be on my A game, you've really stomached me, Adam. Thank God this isn't live.
No, that's good.
So for me, being on my A game is when I feel happy and content. When I've reached that point, I know I'm being successful in all the areas of my life. When I'm not, I can recognise it, because for me, success is nothing more than happiness. It's hitting targets, hitting goals, then I've been successful. There's always another one. So I'm always looking to be balanced, happy and content. And that's when I know I'm on my A game. When I'm functioning from a balanced place, then I'm there.
I love it. Are you happy?
Yeah, very much so, yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Where can people find out more about you? We'll put all your details in the show notes anyway, but yeah.
Probably check out my website, RebeccaPFox.com, or just Google me. Everything comes up, my book, my website, my socials, and all the podcasts I've been on.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for your time today.
Oh, no, thank you. I've loved it.
Amazing.